Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of FinTech Fridays. I'm excited about this conversation. I normally am introducing myself to new people, but I've known Jeremy forever. But really interested, Jeremy, in what you're up to with TitleLook. But first of all, thanks for coming on.
Great to be here, Brian. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk, as
Yeah,
always.
so I think I want to get right into it, man.
Okay.
You joined TitleLook last year, and uh, the word title is in there, so that should be a signal for people about what you all do. But I'm guessing a lot of my audience really doesn't know who TitleLook is, what you guys do, why you're different, and how you're really setting out to disrupt and improve the process for everybody in the mortgage industry as it relates to title. So let's break it down, man.
Thank you. Great start. So, TitleLook is a company that was serving title underwriters and title agents for the last 4 or 5 years. So, it wouldn't surprise me on the lending side, real estate side, consumer side, having not heard of TitleLook, no surprise there. What I saw when I met the founders and the head of product of the company and we started talking was a pretty common problem we've had in other parts of the mortgage or lending space that they solve for title. And what's that problem? So the biggest thing is getting on the same page of how data moves, what data means, and who uses it. So one of the biggest ways you have success in our industry is making experts more efficient. That has always been a really key piece of how we think about mortgage loan officers, how we think of underwriters, and so what TitleLook had been doing for title folks was actually connecting the digital commitment or preliminary report. Some states call it preliminary report, some parts of the country, most people call it a title commitment, but it's the result of the work of the title agent to prepare that file to clear to close. It's the search and exam results. It's all the things about that property that are unique or potentially pose a risk that title insurance has to cover or choose to accept from coverage, in those additional schedules. So the expert, the title folks, they pull everything together, and typically that would just live in a PDF and it would move from place to place, like we've seen mortgage data move or we've seen real estate data move, historically on our side of the fence as well. And so what TitleLook said was, let's get all of that data out of PDFs and make it accessible to the ecosystem on the title side for sure, because that's where we started. But my job was to come in and bring that over to lending, real estate, and consumers to say these three groups can benefit from title data, title knowledge, title visibility as well. And so the actual offering for the mortgage industry looks something like this. You send a title commitment into a lender, and the lender gets to grab the data. We truly parse the data out of that document, whether it's a Word document or a PDF, and then use it in their system as if each title order looked exactly the same. We know they don't. They come in from all over the country. They come in from whomever was selected by the consumer or whoever the lender has a relationship with in that area or for their refi business. And so for operations, for a closer, all those title commitments look different. Every single time you double click on a PDF, you're kind of looking, okay, who's the underwriter? Where's this section? What are we doing? You get pretty good at it, as we all do in this industry, looking at thousands of these a year. Our teams get pretty good. But just like other parts of the industry, we've empowered our teams to work off of better tools, better solutions. And so for lenders, this is a way to actually streamline title intake and clear to close.
Love it. So said a little bit differently, but at the end of the day, and you hit on this right out of the gate. Traditionally, the data passes from player A to player B to player C in the form of this document,
Yep.
right? And then every player in that line of work has things they do with the data in that document. And
Yep.
what I just heard was, at a minimum, you guys have figured out how to make it easier to do the work by getting to the data quickly, right? Pulling it
That's
out of
right.
the PDF document and then serving it up in a data format. Um, so the work is streamlined because now I don't have to go look in a PDF that maybe I'm not familiar with this particular this insurer or whatever. Uh, so that part makes a ton of sense. What I'm interested in is what's your what do you see,
Yeah.
as the next evolution of this now that you have the data, what's the art of the possible with this data, and how does that start to change the relationship between the players?
Yeah, one of the things that really, I think, limited, when I say our understanding, the mortgage and real estate's understanding of title, which is better by a little than the consumer's understanding of title. One of the things that kind of limited our ability to see in, I like to tell title agents, it was for a good reason, but it didn't necessarily benefit the title industry. And what I mean by that is, and you remember this, when you had a trusted title partner, what you heard from them is, we got this. We'll take care of this. We got this. We'll take care of this. And they did. They delivered. And so the title industry delivered
Yeah,
in and out every day, year over year. But expand that over 30, 40 years, the person on the other side of that transaction doesn't actually know what's going on over there, and didn't have to learn about it because their
right,
title partner was so set up for success. But now you see people asking, like, well, I want to know more. What's going on there? How can we innovate? How can we save some money for the consumer? How can we make this part of the larger ecosystem, as you and I talk about all the time? How do we make the consumer experience feel like one experience instead of five? Well, title's a big piece of that, because it's another piece. It's, the title settlement is a huge milestone. And I think that's where we see this going, which is, a lot of what has been innovation in title settlement closing has actually been about settlement, hasn't really been about
yeah,
title. There's been a lot of change on what the closing feels like, where it happens, does it happen digitally? I know that well from being at Stavvy, right? Like, how does that closing come together? The actual title policy, the actual title insurance being opened up so that consumers see, oh, this is exactly the value I'm getting. This is why I'm participating in this. This is what I'm buying, when I buy title insurance, is actually a huge benefit to the title industry for getting their product to be better understood. I think the other thing that's kind of big, high level, abstract, like what how that fits in, we can talk practically speaking. But even bigger than that, I think, is reordering the operational path, right? We're trying to move as much as we can up front. You're trying to do it for how consumers know what they can shop for, how much they can afford, and what they can go out and get a home in their market. Same thing here. How do we get more information about the house up front? How do we reuse data about that house the next time we see it in the ecosystem, the next time we see it come back around for a refinance or for another transaction? And so, what I'm hoping to see, what I'm hoping to build, is that the data that was historically either locked in the PDFs, as you mentioned a minute ago, or not trusted because it came from a different source. One of the other limiting factors, I mentioned visibility. One of the other limiting factors was just practical. Each underwriter produced technology to support their ecosystem. And that's how they fed value. And that's how they won over agents or market share, was with what we put in the market. How do we benefit our pipeline of getting more title policies? The problem is, as like the title industry contracted, and there's kind of like four large title underwriters, call it seven or so, approximately more. You've got 11 to 14 title underwriters pushing software out, pushing technology out, pushing solutions out that only works for their, by and large, only
right.
works for their ecosystem, for their version of title insurance. And so it was very difficult to look across and compare for lenders, compare timelines, compare quality, compare partners. When we have repeat players in this industry, which is often, you should be able to get a high degree of efficiency with a repeat player. It's why a lot of title companies are owned by mortgage companies or real estate companies. I want repeat players. I want efficiency. What TitleLook's trying to do is make a data standard that's universal. You get the efficiencies of an affiliate without having an affiliate. Everybody you do business with feels like an affiliate in our platform because you're getting the same data each and every time. And then you can push it farther upstream, to your point. Then you can start to share it with real estate agents, consumers, and your branch managers, mortgage loan officers to say, there's real savings here. There's actual, not only is there real savings, but there's actual benefits you can get to your operations team, to your downstream timelines, contingencies, closing dates, when you use this data up front and clear title right away. And so I think
Love it.
pulling that operational stuff forward is where it really starts to change the game.
You and I meet here and there back, down in Detroit, our hometown here. And during one of our last meetings, you gave a great analogy around this process, comparing it to car sales and Carfax.
Yep.
Maybe kind of tie that together a little bit and share, kind of that analogy with the audience here.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in our industry, particularly if you talk to innovators, talk to people in the startup space, you've probably heard somebody say, we should have a Carfax of houses. That's something we've all heard. It's something we've all wanted, candidly, for a long time. I think the thing that I'm thinking about is, how do we get there? What does that mean? What are the steps?
Yeah.
Coming right in this industry and just sort of putting in an entirely new product or piece, actually, as we all know, can be downright impossible. But building it incrementally with the right partnerships and with the right other companies in your ecosystem, I think can start to make progress down that road. And so what I've been asking people in our industry about, asking your audience about, are things like a lemon law. We have a lemon law in every state. Used cars can't be sold to a buyer if they're a lemon, quote unquote, if they have hidden defects, and they will be bought back. That consumer has protections. And by and large, we have nothing like that in real estate. We have some disclosures. We've got some disclosures around lead paint, and we have agents and inspectors looking on both sides to produce reports or to protect, their customer. But we don't have really a comprehensive way of thinking about real estate, protecting real estate, or providing data and information about houses as they transfer. In fact, by and large, we will actually create a wall. We'll create a curtain wall, whatever you want to call it, between the buyer and the seller. They can't talk. They can't know each other. Sometimes even at closing or after closing, no information is really transferred about this house that has its own characteristics, that it has its own movements, its way of existing. And so what really we're talking about here is moving at least title up towards that moment when the house transfers, that moment when the house gets listed, that moment when the house comes back up for review. We've seen tremendous efficiencies brought to refinance title because we had so many refinances back to back over the last few years, 10 years looking back, that refinance title became like, well, what do we need to insure here? Can we do something that's a little bit more efficient? Can we do something that's a little more targeted? So TitleLook is saying you can have that for purchase. And when a house moves, let's clean title right there. Let's get title clear at listing. Buyer has nothing to worry about. And there's a digital record now. Each and every time you're building from a digital milestone that says, all right, the last time we looked at this house, we had clean title here. What could have happened? And then you just have to know, what are the number of years? What are the number of intervening or other factors? And so title agents can get really sharp. And I think innovators can come up with even more tools to help title actually really hone in on, what's this property's risk? How do we protect against it? And if you have a digital record, you have a better starting point from, informing real estate agents, informing the market, letting buyers have some level of comfort around what they're buying.
Yeah, it's still amazing to me with where we are, from a digital perspective, not just in our industry but in the world. And yet, when you peel apart that part of the process, the title settlement, it still has some antiquated aspects to it, right? You still have the municipalities where everything's manually recorded and filed, and challenges like that. This is, I mean, you guys are definitely scratching an itch that needs to be scratched here, and one that's long overdue. What, in the last few minutes here, Jeremy,
Yeah.
what should how should our audience, who's mainly originators, owner operators, and originators, what should they be thinking about as it relates to this kind of next evolution of the digitization, of this data, and how should they be prepared to kind of work with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest area of confusion that I hear from originators is around what is available to the consumer relative to title. It's getting confusing. What is an attorney opinion letter? What is some of these other kind of faster verifications of title? They're all pushing the industry forward. They're all challenging the status quo, and we're here for that. But because they're at different levels of either market penetration or sophistication, there's, I think, on the originator branch manager side, it's like, okay, so does my consumer benefit? And if so, how? So I think the biggest thing you can be ready for is understanding where the actual savings are relative to the title policy and the settlement fees. Right now, that really means two things. Yes, Fannie and Freddie are offering the option to use an attorney opinion letter that can, at least in their mind, lower the cost to that consumer by using a firm to do that, using an attorney or a company to do that, instead of getting a traditional owner's policy. That's one way I think we can start to think about, is that who's offering that? Is your company offering that? And does it actually, in your jurisdiction, your area, provide you savings? Fannie Mae's data says yes. They believe that will save the consumer something in the neighborhood, $500, something like that,
Yeah.
which we see a lot of lenders use that as an incentive. So it's the number this industry has kind of appreciated, let's say.
Yeah.
I think the second thing is on reissue rates or on these discounted rates. A lot of title underwriters will actually post, they'll actually file with the state insurance agency cheaper rates. Not all underwriters are made the same, let's say. And then when you get a customer that comes back to you on their property, they come back around out of your portfolio to do something, cash out refi, do the next thing in their life, they can actually capture savings, sometimes 30-40% savings if they're getting a reissue rate on that property. And those are not always known by consumers. They're not always grabbed by loan officers. So if you're looking to have savings put right up front for your customers, start to look at these other opportunities, either with your title agent partners, ask them who they're using as an underwriter to try to get at these. But you can save $500,000 on title work for your customer by being aware that these options are there.
Love it. And I think too often consumers, and then even the loan officers that are serving the consumers, the mindset is from the loan officer, well, that's just a given, that's part of the process. The consumer's got to pay for it. The average consumer has no idea that this process exists, and that they even have optionality around shopping for services. So I think in the where I spend a lot of time talking is, education, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our highest and best use for our loan officers is to be that local, trusted financial expert as it relates to home ownership. And part of that is understanding what consumers have options to do. And I think that the title process, the title cost, all that stuff that gets wrapped in there is an area that's a mystery. And I think it's an opportunity for loan officers to, again, differentiate themselves as that local market expert. So I love what you guys are doing. You're always on the cutting edge of where we need to go in our industry, and so I appreciate everything you're doing, Jeremy.
Well, thank you for saying that. We agree. I mean, we want to provide visibility and tools in this area that's been largely overlooked by a lot of folks on the mortgage side. So we think we can push out a lot of that data. And even more than that, to your point, it's about being with the right companies who see the consumer experience and the cost of the transaction as their top priority. Lowering that cost and pushing that efficiency back through. We want to be talking to those companies too. We understand that title insurance is just a piece. And so the more we can work in collaboration with everybody else who's trying to do the same thing, get more information visible, get it up front, the better we'll all be. So I appreciate hearing you say that, because I know you and I talk about it a lot, but getting it out to the audience, we want to be part of that community and help those folks.
Right on. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. Happy New Year. Looking forward to great things from you and from TitleLook.
Oh, I appreciate it, Brian. Always good to talk to you. Thank you for everything you do for this industry. It's good to see you, and I know we'll talk soon.
Right on. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Come back in 2 weeks for our next episode of FinTech Fridays.